Hi, my name is Bryoni and I'm the Mindfulness Director at Kinema Fitness. Welcome to our March meditation on our Be Well platform. This month is Nutritional Wellness Month, and we're going to focus on a mindful eating practice. So you can find a small snack or piece of food like an almond, a piece of chocolate, or a tangerine, and use it for today's practice. This will be an eyes open practice, and you can go ahead and pause now to find your snack if you need to. If you're joining back after pausing, welcome back. We'll start today's practice with a tall seat. You can either sit in a chair or a cushion on the floor, hips above knees, and just take a deep breath in through your nose. Open mouth, exhale to let it go. We'll take 2 more breaths like that. Inhaling and exhaling. And 1 more deep breath in. Open mouth, exhale. And then you can just bring your attention to the sensation of your breath at your nose. Just noticing the smooth flow of your inhales and the smooth flow of your exhales up and out. Just breathing at a normal pace, so we're not manipulating the breath here. We're simply just noticing. And this is to ground us in the present moment before we begin our practice with the food. Now, for today's practice, there's a really important pillar that we're practicing under the scope of mindfulness, and that is beginner's mind. Beginner's mind is doing something as if it's your first time doing it, as if you were a beginner, or listening to something as if it's the first time you've ever heard it. And it's an important practice because it opens up our perspective. It allows us to shed our biases that we may have walking around as non-beginners in a lot of things that we do day to day. And it improves creativity as well. You begin to think a little bit outside of the box as a beginner or someone seeing this activity with a fresh pair of eyes. For today, we're using eating as the activity. So go ahead and take a look at your piece of food. And before we enter into that space of beginner's mind, you can bring to mind all of the people who were involved in getting it right in front of you. So if it's a tangerine, you can bring to mind the folks who picked it, the folks who drove that tangerine to the store where you bought it, the person who was responsible for putting the food item on the shelf, and then the cashier who maybe helped you check out at the store. And you can move through those thoughts about whatever item you have in front of you. It may not necessarily be true that all of those different steps were involved, but it is true that other folks played a role in getting this food right in front of you, and you can use that as fuel for a gratitude practice. So you might begin to pick up on a small sense of appreciation for all of the hands that played a part in getting that food to you. And now we're really going to drop into that beginner's mind. So I want you to pretend that you are an alien visiting from outer space, and you have no idea what this food item is in front of you. Now, I know that you have a specific word that comes to mind when you look at this piece of food. Maybe it's almond or tangerine or chocolate, but pretend you don't know those words and don't allow yourself to use those words when describing this piece of food. So if you catch yourself saying the word that you know it is, try to avoid it. Drop that word and use other words to describe it. So just using our sense of sight and eyes, you can take a look at it and begin to describe the color in your mind or even out loud if you're in a space where you can practice out loud. And then start to describe the shape. Is it round, oval, diamond shaped? And finally, begin to describe the texture. Does it look smooth or slimy or rigid, rough? And now we'll pick up the piece of food and observe with our sense of touch. So you can take it into your hand and kind of roll it around or feel it tracing your thumb or index finger over the surface, noticing what's there. Are there small pores in the surface of this piece of food? And now we'll use our sense of smell. So holding the piece of food in your hand, you can smell with your nose, taking an inhale, and just get a sense for what you can smell. Does it remind you of anything? A specific memory or a specific person? What does that smell like? And finally, we'll move on to taste. But it's going to be difficult because I'm going to ask you to place one piece of the food on your tongue without chewing and just let it sit there. So if you need to unwrap this piece of food, you can do that now. And just take one bite-sized piece onto your tongue. As you let it sit there, do you notice what's happening in your body? Maybe you're salivating, maybe your stomach is grumbling, perhaps nothing. Maybe it tastes a little different. You can ask yourself, what other piece of food does this taste like? And once you've gone through those steps, start to chew really slowly, taking one bite at a time. Once you've fully chewed this piece of food, you can then complete the eating regimen. You can swallow and just notice what is left in your mouth. What taste do you have left there? As you go forward with your month here, you might choose to practice this with maybe one meal, one piece of food per day. It's difficult to do it for every meal because it does take a long time. But if you're having a meal with someone you love, it's a great conversation starter. It allows us to understand the food that we're eating a little bit better, practice gratitude and appreciation, and also get really curious about what we're putting into our bodies. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Bryoni. Again, I'm Kinimo's Mindfulness Director, and I'll see you for next month's video.